I am about to unlock a core memory.
Berries and cream, berries and cream. I'm a little lad who loves berries and
cream. I've become so immune to these commercials because they've been a part of my experience since I was a kid. I'm down for weird and wild, but I just want to know how commercials got to this point. So to find the answer, I spoke to advertising experts, I spoke to a film archivist, and I also looked back and tried to find one of the very first absurd commercials. And what I found makes a lot of sense.
What?
Like all good stories, mine started at the New York Public Library, where I was determined to find anything I could on absurdity and commercials. I scoured the internet, I looked through journals. But when we're talking about absurdity, what exactly do we mean?
Absurdity is when the status quo gets disrupted.
Meow, 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 meow.
Nobody wants to eat me! I'm the luckiest!
It's when the viewer has to stop and pay attention.
What we see as sort of irrational or bizarre or totally non sequitur and like, where did this come from? I think so. That would be, I'm putting on my anthropologist hat, and I would say it really depends on the time and the space and the place that people are in.
So, for the context of this video, absurd commercials are going to be defined as commercials that are intentionally ridiculous and don't make a ton of logical sense. Now, it's important to note, absurdity is different than humor, but an absurd ad can contain humor. What are some absurd commercials that you can think of?
I think like one was like the what's up, where people are like, "Rah!"
What's that?
Maybe the closest to that would be Geico.
This is my final plea. I am a gecko, not to be confused with Geico, which could save you hundreds on car insurance.
Commercials have obviously been around for many, many decades, but what I want to know is, how long have they been weird? So my coworker Michaela agreed to sit down with me and watch through all the absurd commercials that I could find from 2023 to the 1940s.
We love these songs because they are good to us.
Oh my God.
There is no songs.
What is it?
I hate it. Like, what is this?
Oh my God.
They just knew they were gonna sell that product, so
Yeah.
they were like, we'll just freak people out.
Hey everybody, I'm done trick-or-treating and now I'm gonna go for a stuffed crust pizza at Pizza Hut.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Good morning, dear.
Good morning, sweetie birdie.
I'm out of coffee.
Out of coffee?
Oh my gosh.
Get the new giant-size Instant Maxwell House.
It's so strange.
But across all decades, one industry certainly went the hardest when it came to advertising: the tobacco industry.
Get lucky.
I came across this article from the advertising section in the New York Times, published in 1995, and in it, they highlight the most memorable ads from the 90s to the 40s, and they mention this Lucky Strike ad called Dancing Cigarettes. Sounds absurd.
It's time right now for a Lucky Strike.
To right, dear honey, with the right left 8. Grand right and left around you go. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco.
I found out that the creator of the ad was this guy named Jameson Handy. Jameson Handy was an Olympian, and from the 20s to the 60s, his company produced a ton of stop-motion advertisements. Known as a pioneer of industrial films, his studio produced thousands of educational, military, and commercial projects.
I'm Rick Prelinger, co-founder of Prelinger Archives in San Francisco. I've collected useful cinema for many years. Useful cinema is advertising, industrial, educational films, home movies, film that has a job to do, not film made specifically to entertain. So the Lucky Strike, there's several of them. There's the barn dance and the marching cigarettes, and they were made actually as theatrical ads to be shown in theaters, but they were perfectly adapted to show on TV as well. And TV commercials are actually descended from 1-minute movies, which were actually called minute movies, to be shown in theaters. Those go way back. But even before that, I think the first movie ad that's kind of absurd is 1896. It was made for Admiral cigarettes, and they say that it was shown on the walls of buildings in Times Square, New York City in 1896. So this is the very beginning of cinema, going back to 1894, 1895. Yeah. Smart entrepreneurs even then thought about movies as a means of short-form advertising.
1896 is way further back than what I was anticipating, and I couldn't help but draw a link between the Admiral cigarettes and Lucky Strike commercials. It seems like the tobacco industry opened the doors for a whole new form of advertising. The weird.
So smoking was very ingrained in our culture. The tobacco companies had all the money.
But I'll tell you something about the Lucky Strike film. It is not an original concept.
One of my colleagues calls it the rubber band effect. You get kind of these repeated, you get conservatism of the 50s, conservatism of the 80s.
I'm not surprised the advertisers are inspired or directly copy commercials from the past because absurdity seems to work. In a thorough study chronicled in Effects of Absurdity in Advertising, they say, absurdity in most instances had a positive influence on advertising effectiveness as measured by brand name recall, attitude to the ad, and brand. More importantly, absurdity seems to be especially effective for those consumers who have a prior negative attitude toward the product class.
Absurd images and tactics and ads, it's always been to drive people's attention.
And brand recognition often results in higher sales, but sometimes just the fact that a consumer remembers a brand is enough. But my main takeaway from watching through all of these commercials is that our tolerance for what absurdity means is constantly evolving. Drop your favorite absurd ad in the comments below. Thank you for watching. My name is Carmen, and please like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Morning Brew.